world's most popular sport has a bit of a problem. Nobody can agree on what to call it. The majority of the world calls it football, but a handful of countries, most notably the US, prefer the term soccer. But where did the word even come from? The name actually came from England and is nearly as old as the rules of the sport themselves. The earliest evidence of football comes from China in the 3rd century BCE, a sport that they called kuju. Over the ages, many types of football spread throughout the world, eventually finding their place in England. It became especially popular with aristocratic English schoolboys, who decided that it was time to finally define the rules of the game. On October the 26th, 1863, the leaders of a dozen English football clubs met at the Freemasons Tavern in London to create a rulebook, and in doing so, formed the Football Association. However, there were still other versions of the game around, and a new group wrote a different rulebook in 1871, one that allowed you to use your hands. This new form of football was known as rugby football, named after the rugby school in England. The original rules, made by the Football Association, were then called association football. Both of these names were a mouthful, so rugby football became rugger and association football became soccer. These two new official sports began spreading throughout the world, one more so than the other. By the time it found its way to the United States, they already had a sport called football, also known as gridiron football or American football. So the US and others in similar situations stick to soccer, while the rest of the world still tends to prefer football to refer to the beautiful game.
On the morning of December 21, 1891, James Naismith emerged from his office with an idea. He had spent 2 weeks searching for an indoor athletic activity to occupy his physical education class during the cold winter months. Naismith tried indoor adaptations of soccer, lacrosse, and football, but each only led to people getting injured. He was disappointed when he couldn't find an indoor sport. So, Naismith decided to invent it. The first official basketball game was played on January 20, 1892. The contest featured 2 teams of 9 players, and ended in a score of 1-0. It was far from the current version of basketball, played worldwide today. For example, basketball was originally played with a soccer ball and peach baskets. So, someone had to climb on a ladder each time to get the ball out. Later, to make it easier, a hole was drilled into the bottom of the basket. The original game had only 13 rules, with no dribble, the 3-point line, and a greater tolerance of physical contact. Still, modern basketball is firmly rooted in many of the original rules.
This is very similar to the one-hand set shot in body position in using the ball. Lay-up shot. In this jump, extend the legs, shoulders, back, elbows, and direct the wrist and fingers straight at the basket. One-hand set shot. Start with your feet and shoulder width apart and keep your knees slightly bent. Overhead pass is used when a defender is closely guarding. Sidearm pass is used when a defender is guarding you and you have to pass around him. Behind the back pass is used when a defender runs head-on to you. Bounce pass is most often used when you are trying to pass the ball. Test pass. This is considered the most simplest and used pass in basketball. Dribbling. This is a way by which you repeatedly bounce the ball off the floor. Kicking is moving the ball around with your feet. Passing is kicking the ball towards your teammate. Dribbling is moving the ball towards your opponent's goal using the foot and at the same time controlling it.